In the beginning, God created the heavens, the earth, and his holy set-apart calendar. Are you someone who wants to get on the same pattern of time and festival keeping as our Creator, his Son, and the holy angels in the heavens above? Stick around to learn a little bit more about it, and get a first look at Hanging on His Word's very own release of the creation solar calendar. I know what you might be thinking. Oh great, another calendar video. Calendars can certainly be confusing. Unfortunately, they also tend to create quite a bit of division in the body of Messiah. If that has been your experience, I want to encourage you to hear this video out. It's frustrating to see so many people using dissimilar calendars, which results in the celebration of Yahweh's feasts at totally different times. It has the potential to take the wind out of your festival keeping sails. One congregation celebrates Passover on this day, and another congregation celebrates it on that day. Which group of believers do you join? All groups contain people who love the Father and are trying their best to navigate this life by keeping the commandments the very best that they know how. Do you just celebrate Passover several times by going to all the gatherings? Should you just stay home and celebrate within your own four walls? The calendar struggle is real, so why can't we find solidarity with keeping the appointed times? I think we're long overdue to seek unification on this matter, which begs the question, what calendar did ancient Israel truly follow, and is it the same one that Orthodox Jews and Messianic congregations keep today? Does it even matter? We'll answer these questions as we advance through this video. Let's start off with some good old-fashioned scripture to lay the foundation of context and understanding. Genesis 1:14 says, "And God said, Let there be luminaries in the firmament of the heaven, to give light upon the earth, to divide between day and night, and let them be for signs, and for appointed feasts, and for days, and for years." Genesis 1:16 says, "God made two great luminaries, the great luminary to rule the day, and the lesser luminary to rule the night, and he made the stars as well." The great luminaries, which are natural light-giving bodies, were not only created to provide light on the earth during the day and night, but they were appointed to help us keep proper track of time, which includes showing up at the right period for Yahweh's festivals. The sun, which Moses appropriately refers to as the greater luminary, leads the charge on this matter. The moon acts as a witness. I'll be saving the moon and the role she plays for another time. She's mysterious and deserving of her own video. Yahweh initiated his calendar for mankind to start keeping on day 4 of creation week. At the exact moment that he brought forth these luminaries is when day number 1 of month number 1 commenced on the creation solar calendar. The reason why we don't start day 1 of month 1 on day 1 of creation is simply because the luminaries weren't created yet. The sun is truly the most important of all the luminaries when considering that the Father is desirous of our ability to accurately keep time. Jubilees 2:9-10 says, "And Yahweh appointed the sun to be a great sign on the earth for days and for Sabbaths and for months and for feasts and for years and for Sabbaths of years and for jubilees and for all seasons of the years. And it divides the light from the darkness and for prosperity, that all things may prosper which shoot and grow on the earth. These 3 kinds he made on the 4th day." One very important task that the sun eternally performs is the ushering in of all divisions of time. And he, yes, the sun is said to be a male, must do so with absolute precision. The sun brings in the days, weeks, or Sabbaths, months, years, appointed holy festivals or feasts within each passing year, 4 seasons of the year, Sabbaths of years, which is a segment of time that refers to every 7 years, and Jubilees, which is another segment of time that refers to 49 years. To reiterate this precision, Enoch states, "And the sun and the stars bring in all the years exactly, so that they do not advance or delay their position by a single day unto eternity. but complete the years with perfect justice in 364 days. 364 is going to be a number that you'll be well acquainted with. The sun brings in all the years exactly. It completes the years with perfect justice in a 364-day solar year. This is as accurate as it gets. Enoch was told repeatedly by the archangel Uriel that this system of solar timekeeping is how the Father intended mankind to operate, and Uriel is in a position of authority to make those claims. Yahweh created Uriel on day 1 of creation, along with all the other angelic beings, and tasked him with a few important roles, one of those being the chief conductor of all the luminaries. Uriel, to this very day, ensures that the luminaries continue to perform their foreordained circuits in the firmaments above where they reside, with precision. 1 Enoch 85, 4-14 says, "Blessed are all the righteous, blessed are all those who walk in the way of righteousness and sin not as the sinners, in the reckoning of all their days in which the sun traverses the heaven, entering into and departing from the gates for 30 days, with the heads of thousands of the order of the stars, together with the 4 which are intercalated, which divide the 4 portions of the year, which lead them and enter with them 4 days. Owing to them, men shall be at fault, and not reckon them in the whole reckoning of the year. Yes, men shall be at fault, and not recognize them accurately. For they belong to the reckoning of the year, and are truly recorded thereon forever, one in the first gate, and one in the third, and one in the fourth, and one in the sixth. And the year is completed in 364 days. And the account thereof is accurate, and the recorded reckoning thereof exact. For the luminaries and months and festivals and years and days has Uriel shown and revealed to me, to whom the Lord of the whole creation of the world has subjected the host of heaven. And he has power over night and day in the heaven to cause the light, to give light to men, sun, moon, and stars, and all the powers of the heaven which revolve in their circular chariots. And these are the orders of the stars, which set in their places, and in their seasons and festivals and months. And these are the names of those who lead them, who watch that they enter at their times, in their orders, in their seasons, in their months, in their periods of dominion, and in their positions. Their 4 leaders who divide the 4 parts of the year enter first, and after them, the 12 leaders of the orders who divide the months. And for the 360 days, there are heads over thousands who divide the days. And for the 4 intercalary days, there are the leaders which sunder the 4 parts of the year. And these heads over thousands are intercalated between leader and leader, each behind a station, but their leaders make the division. And these are the names of the leaders who divide the 4 parts of the year which are ordained: Milkael, Helamelech, Melagel, and Narel. And the names of those who lead them: Adnarel, and Ijwaseswel, and Elamiel. These 3 follow the leaders of the orders. There is one that follows the 3 leaders of the orders, which follow those leaders of stations that divide the 4 parts of the year. So, what are these intercalary days? An intercalary day is essentially a seasonal day of transition into the next phase of months. We're informed that there are 4 other angels who help usher in these intercalary days at their appointed times. As I just read, Uriel claims that these 4 intercalary days will not be recognized accurately by men on the earth, because they will err by ceasing to adhere to the correct luminary for timekeeping purposes. This is another reason why a lunar-based calendar has never, and will never work. If Enoch was born around the 622nd year of the life of Adam, does this mean that the calendar was only introduced to mankind just over 6 centuries into an already flourishing creation? I don't believe so. I suspect that Adam and his descendants kept a solar calendar of sorts. It's not like Adam wasn't to concern himself with timekeeping. Adam tended the garden for 7 years before he was removed, according to the Book of Jubilees. That means that he was aware of the years going by, which means that he knew that there were 364 days in a year. The 4 seasons have always existed as well, which necessitates and assumes the 4 intercalary days. The sun, moon, and stars have been performing their circuits ever since day 4 of creation week, There's nothing new under the sun. I believe that Enoch was shown the exactness of how the luminaries perform their daily, monthly, and yearly circuits in the firmaments where they reside for posterity purposes. He needed a documented work to pass along to mankind for the same reason why Moses had to record what he wrote in the Book of Jubilees regarding how the children of Israel's eventual departure from properly keeping the Father's calendar would come to pass. It wasn't long after the event of the Great Flood that Noah's sons started to stray, not only from the commandments given to them for how they were to conduct themselves in the earth, but from Yahweh's instructed timekeeping methodology. Let's head over to Jubilees, where we witness once again another angel reminding a faithful in-covenant man, that being Moses, how to properly keep the solar creation calendar. Command the children of Israel that they observe the years according to this reckoning, 364 days, and these will constitute a complete year, and they will not disturb its time from its days and from its feasts. For everything will fall out in them according to their testimony, and they will not leave out any day nor disturb any feasts. But if they do neglect and do not observe them according to his commandment, then they will disturb all their seasons, and the years will be dislodged from this order. And they will disturb the seasons, and the years will be dislodged, and they will neglect their ordinances. And all the children of Israel will forget, and will not find the path of the years, and will forget the new moons, and seasons, and Sabbaths, and they will go wrong as to all the order of the years. For I know, and from this time on will I declare it unto you, and it is not of my own devising. For the book lies written before me, and on the heavenly tablets the division of days is ordained, lest they forget the feasts of the covenant, and walk according to the feasts of the Gentiles, after their error, and after their ignorance. For there will be those who will assuredly make observations of the moon, how it disturbs the seasons and comes in from year to year 10 days too soon. For this reason the years will come upon them, when they will disturb the order, and make an abominable day, the day of testimony, and an unclean day, a feast day, and they will confound all the days, the holy with the unclean, and the unclean day with the holy. For they will go wrong as to the months and Sabbaths and feasts and jubilees. For this reason I command and testify to you, that you may testify to them. For after your death, your children will disturb them, so that they will not make the year 364 days only. And for this reason they will go wrong as to the new moons and seasons and Sabbaths and festivals, and they will eat all kinds of blood with all kinds of flesh. Let's briefly compare the sun and the moon as it relates to which one we should be following. So the sun has 364 days in the year, which constitutes a complete year. And if we do follow the sun, we will not disturb time from all of the 364 days of the year. It will not disturb the timing of the feast days within the year, which is huge, because we want to make sure that we're actually meeting Yahweh at his appointed times, as opposed to arbitrarily and randomly choosing our own appointed times based off of our own observance of something that we're not even supposed to be observing. And so I think as we move forward in this calendar series, we're going to actually see the importance of being on this solar calendar, as several instances in the scriptures and as recorded in the Book of Jubilees, we're actually going to see angelic interactions taking place on these very specific feast days with the patriarchs. And so keep an eye out for those videos. And when we allow the sun to keep time as it should, time will fall out precisely as it should. Now we're going to take a quick look at the moon. And if we're observing the moon to keep our calendar, there are 354 days in the year, which constitutes an incomplete year. Observing the moon will disturb the seasons, and the years will be dislodged from its accurate path. It will disturb the timing of the feasts, months, Sabbaths, and Jubilees. And as we can already witness, it will come in 10 days too soon. That's the 354 days every year. So as year goes by, year by year by year, we lose 10 days. And that adds up. That adds up a lot. And when we do some simple math, you can see that after 3 years, we've lost 1 month. And it's in the Father's heart that we do not disturb time from its years, from its seasons, and from keeping the feast days. Alright, so what you're looking at here on screen is a visual representation of the 364-day solar calendar year. It is presented as a circle, which has 4 quadrants or 4 quarters of the year. And within each quadrant, there are 3 pie-shaped sections that represent 3 months in each quarter, adding up to 12 months of the year. And so on the left side of your screen, we see here the vernal spring equinox, which ushers in the head of the year. This is when Yahweh wanted his people to start actually practicing their calendar at the first day of the first month, which starts right after the spring equinox. And if you can see on the top left of the first quadrant, spring pops up and represents the 3 months of the first quadrant. And if you look in the inner ring of the circle in the middle of the screen there, we have the sun passing through the 4th gate, which ushers in the first month. And it does that actually, that circuit in the heavens above where it was created and put into motion for 30 days. The sun then moves through the 5th gate, which ushers in the 2nd month, and it does that for 30 days as well. And then it'll go through the 6th gate, starting the 3rd month, and it'll do a circuit for 30 days. And after that, we're going to see the summer solstice take place, which ushers in the first intercalary day. Intercalary days representing the segue into a new season. So if you take a look at the top right quadrant, we have summer coming. Summer will be for the 3 months within that quadrant. And during this period, actually, the sun then passes back through the 6th gate. There are only 6 gates total that the sun moves throughout the entirety of the year. And so it kind of does a switcheroo and comes back through the 6th gate, which kicks off the 4th month, and it does its circuit, its pattern, for 30 days. The sun then moves back through the 5th gate, kicking off the 5th month for 30 days, and then it'll go through the 4th gate, starting the 6th month, and that'll happen for 30 days as well. And then we have the autumnal fall equinox, which is where yet another intercalary day takes place. And after this, on the bottom right quadrant, we have fall popping up. Fall taking place for 3 months within the quadrant that it represents. And so we have the sun moving into the 3rd gate and then performing its circuit in the 7th month for 30 days. It then transitions through the 2nd gate, starting the 8th month, and it does that for 30 days as well. Then it moves into the 1st gate, through 1st gate, starting the 9th month for 30 days. And then this is where we have the winter solstice. And then yet another intercalary day, which transitions into the winter season. And so the winter season also is for 3 months, unless you're in Canada, then it's about 10 months out of the 12 months of the year. And so we have the sun moving back through the 1st gate again, so it does another loop back through the 1st gate for the 10th month, where it does its pattern for 30 days. Then it goes through the 2nd gate in the 11th month, and it does that for 30 days. And then it goes through the 3rd gate in the 12th month and does that for 30 days as well. And then we're right back to the beginning, where we have the vernal spring equinox kicking off, the head of the year, and then the sun passes through the fourth gate again, and it just does that in perpetuity. And this is how the Father has created, essentially, the way that he wants creation to run. And so I encourage you to examine this visual as well as subsequent slideshows to get a better picture into what it is that the Father created and how he wants us to practice the calendar and just timekeeping in general. It's going to be very useful for how we keep the feasts and how we understand the motions of the luminaries above, and it just brings and draws us closer to the Father, because, as I've said already in this presentation, it's what the Father, the Son, and his holy angels are doing above us. This is the time piece that they're on. And so we all want to be in solidarity regarding this, and I think it's just going to bless us, if anything. I'll be addressing with visuals how the 6-gate system works and what that looks like in a practical sense in another brief video to come. So keep an eye out for that. Now, before I move on to my video explanation of the Hanging on His Word solar creation calendar, I want to inform you, brothers and sisters, that this year's solar creation calendar will be uploaded and available in PDF format to all of my current patrons over at Patreon. So if you're a patron, make sure to head over there to get your creation solar calendar PDF. Also, starting now, I'll be shipping out an exclusive creation solar calendar magnet to any new Patreon member who joins at the 20 pledge tier until the magnets are gone. There are only 30 of these bad boys available, so if you feel led to show support for what I do here at Hanging on His Words, and you like cool magnets like this one, then feel free to click the link above or find the Patreon link in this video's description. So now we're going to take a look at the Hanging on His Words creation solar calendar. This is the official calendar that this YouTube ministry will be on indefinitely. And as you can see here, we have the books of Enoch and the book of Jubilees, which is where a lot of the information regarding this calendar is derived. And in the dead center of your screen here is a priestly figure tucked in behind a visual of the creation model. And he represents Zadok, the high priest, who is from the lineage of Aaron. And as we all know, Aaron was given the priesthood at Sinai after the Exodus event, and Aaron is a direct descendant of Levi, one of Jacob's 12 sons, and Levi was also given the priesthood even before the Mount Sinai event took place. And though it's commonly taught that the priesthood was initiated at Mount Sinai through Aaron, we can actually trace back even further, quite a bit further, to not only Levi receiving the office of the priesthood, but also Jacob, Isaac, Abraham, and further back. The priesthood has always existed. And so this is what the creation solar calendar is based off of, this type of priestly system. The solar calendar and the priesthood are essentially married concepts. So this is month number 1, and obviously I'm showing you the first version of this type of calendar on this channel, and so it has the year 2022, and there will be very basic revisions moving forward as we continue to use this calendar. So obviously, you know, next year's calendar, the year after's calendar, all I'm going to do is revise the numbers on this, as well as the Gregorian calendar dates that you see in the bottom left of each of the squares on each day. So those will be changed to keep it in tandem with the Gregorian calendar for those who need to stay on it, because we're unfortunately still part of this system, this Babylonian system of timekeeping, and so we have to adhere to that with our work schedules and whatever else. Now, if you look at the heading where the days of the week are displayed, you can see it says day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6, day 7. And that's essentially how the time has been laid out from the beginning. They were never named anything. And it wasn't until cultures started to come out of Mesopotamia that we see names attributed to each day of the week. As well, the actual names of the month, those were never named. Also, that wasn't picked up until later, and so the whole timekeeping process was always meant to just be simple. Month 1, month 2, all the way to month 12. Day 1, day 2, all the way to day 7. Simple. Very simple. Now, I'd like to point out a few details in this calendar for your consideration, starting with the intercalary day, which ushers in the spring season. So we have it just before the actual start of month 1, day number 1. And this, as I've mentioned, this calendar is a solar year, a 364-day year. And so when we get to the end of month 12, we have this intercalary day, and it segues into the beginning or the head of the year, which is this next one. And so the head of the year starts off the calendar, month 1, day 1. And on this very day, we have a day of remembrance. And now this day is very significant in that it represents several elements of the flood of Noah. And I'm going to be talking about that in another video, breaking down these 4, as there are 4 days of remembrance that we should be keeping our eyes on. And they're amazing feast days that, like I said, I'll elaborate in a separate video. But moving forward here, we have the Passover, which takes place on the 14th day of the first month. And the Passover is to be celebrated in the evening on the 14th day. I'm going to do a separate video. Lots of little videos. I want to, make some clear, concise, informative videos regarding all the separate feast days and how they tie into this calendar, and how this calendar really does work beautifully with the feast days and what they represent. So then we have unleavened bread, which takes place on the 15th day of the first month. And this is a 7-day long feast. And then the first day following the weekly Sabbath after unleavened bread is finished, we start our count to Shavuot, or Pentecost. And it's a count off of 7 full weeks. So 7 times 7, 49. So we're counting 49 days, and on the 50th day, we are led to Pentecost. And as you can see, the red digits at the bottom right of days 26 through 30, indicating this count off, and it's going to continue on all the way until we finally reach Pentecost. And before I switch to the next slide, I just want you to pay attention to the very bottom of the page where it says 4th gate, right beside the sun, which is at the bottom left. This signifies which gate the sun goes through every month. And for instance, here it says 4th gate rises 30 mornings in the east and sets 30 evenings in the 4th gate in the west. And then we have day 10 parts and night 8 parts. So it's not only telling us which gate the sun goes through and then stays in for 30 days, but it also conveys the portions of the day and night as the sun moves through subsequent gates, and thus changing the different portions of the day and night as it does that. And we'll see that as we continue forward here. So we're in month number 2. Same layout, except we have the second Passover. So the second Passover, for those who are unfamiliar with that concept, that was for anybody who missed the first Passover. I mean, pretty straightforward, right? If you were far away on a journey and you couldn't make it to actually commemorate the first Passover, Yahweh allows for a second Passover. And if we look at the bottom of the screen again, we have the sun going through the 5th gate to start off this second month. It rises 30 mornings in the east and sets 30 evenings in the 5th gate in the west. So the day becomes 11 parts and the night 7 parts. So we're gaining more daylight and we're getting less darkness. Month number 3, we finish our 7 full weeks of 7s count off. As you can see, the red digits leading up to the 15th stop on the 15th, where we do start to celebrate the Feast of Weeks and First Fruits. Feast of Weeks is also known as Shavuot, or Pentecost in the Greek, and the Feast of Weeks and First Fruits is a 2-fold feast day. So we have 2 feast days on one. Then on the 31st, so this is the first time we're seeing 31 days. So as you recall in the other graph that I had pulled up, it was a circle that was split into 4 quadrants, and within each quadrant there were 3 days of 30, and then an intercalary day. So in order to actually display that on this type of a calendar, you have to just add that intercalary day at the end of the 3rd month, thus making it 31 days within that month. And so we have the intercalary day transitioning into a new season, which is summer. And then we have the Day of Remembrance starting on day 1 of month 4, which is the 2nd day of remembrance out of 4 days of remembrance. And it is a feast day, and we are to celebrate it. And if you look at the bottom of this month, we have the sun going through the 6th gate, which starts off this particular month. It rises 30 mornings in the east and sets 30 evenings in the 6th gate in the west. And we can see daylight starting to wane already, with day having 11 parts and night 7 parts. So then we go to month number 5. Nothing in particular here to show, but that the sun goes through the 5th gate starting this month off, and it rises 30 mornings in the east and sets 30 evenings in the 5th gate in the west. And then we have 10 parts of day and 8 parts of night. So yes, it's a consistent waning of daylight as the sun transitions through its gates and we get closer to the fall season. So now we're in month number 6, and we see the intercalary day on the 31st of this month represents yet another transition between seasons. This time we have fall. And so we're on month number 7 now, and the first day of this month is yet another feast day. Feast of Trumpets, or Yom Teruah. And along with this feast day is another day of remembrance. This is the 3rd one, and if you're not picking up the pattern as of yet, these specific days happen to fall every 3 months. So we had the first one on month 1, day 1, skip ahead 3 months, which ends up to be the first day of the 4th month, skip ahead another 3 months, first day of the 7th month, and if my math's correct, skip ahead 3 months, and we'll have another one, the first day of the 10th month. And these are the real remembrance days, I think. So we move ahead to the 10th day of the 7th month, and we have another feast. And yes, I did say feast because this is a feast day, and we are to consume food despite what's commonly taught regarding this day being a fast. And if you actually look really deep into the details of where this fast aspect comes from, it's rooted more in Judaism and tradition as opposed to actual scripture, and it's something I'll be elaborating more on when I do a small video on the Day of Atonement. So moving ahead to the 15th day, we have yet another 7-day feast day. This is a really fun one. Feast of Tabernacles, also known as Sukkot or Booths, and it's a Sabbath, the first day is, and then we move ahead 7 days, and we end up with yet another day, and this day is referred to as the Day of Addition. It too is a Sabbath rest, just like the first day of Tabernacles is. And what is interesting is actually we find very specific details regarding where this Day of Addition came from, as well as actually the origination of the Day of Atonement. And you may be surprised to learn that the details are located in the Book of Jubilees. And so if you haven't read that one, I highly recommend that you do. Read it, research it, study it, do your due diligence, prayerfully consider the material contained in that book. I do believe that this book is inspired, just like any other book of scripture. I believe that the angels mediated the words contained within it to Moses. Moses wrote it down, and it has been preserved for us, and I think it's got historical backing and quite a bit of scholarly validation as well. Alright, if we look at the bottom of this screen, we see that the sun moves through the 3rd gate to start off this month, and it rises 30 mornings in the east and sets 30 evenings in the 3rd gate in the west. which gives us 8 parts day, 10 parts night. So we're seeing a more consistent presence of night as opposed to day as we move forward into the colder months. And so we have month number 8, and there's nothing overly significant in this month to point out other than the sun goes through the second gate, rises 30 mornings in the east and sets 30 evenings in the second gate in the west. So we have an even more diminished amount of daylight. We have day 7 parts, night 11 parts. Month number 9. We have 31 days in this month, which, as you can see, is an intercalary day, which is transitioning into the colder months, which is winter, and this is where the sun actually goes through the first gate, rises 31 mornings in the east, and sets 31 evenings in the first gate in the west. So we have even less daylight, day 6 parts, night 12 parts. Month number 10, the intercalary day, which transitions into winter, brings us to the first day of the 10th month, which is, like I said before, our final day of remembrance. We are to memorialize this day. So we have the sun passing again through the first gate, and it rises 30 mornings in the east and sets 30 evenings in the first gate in the west. So we have day 7 parts, night 11 parts. So we're starting to gain a little bit more daylight here. As we move to month number 11, and we look down at the bottom of the screen there, second gate is where the sun passes through and does its circuit for 30 mornings in the east, and then it sets 30 evenings in the second gate in the west. And we gain more daylight, day 8 parts, night 10 parts, as we move to the final month in this solar calendar year. And we have the 31 days in this month as well, and it ushers in an intercalary day, bringing us to spring, which is where, as we see at the bottom of the screen, the sun goes through the third gate, rises 30 mornings in the east, sets 30 evenings in the third gate in the west. We have an equal portion of day and night, so we got more daylight coming, and we go through this cycle all over again. We go right back to month number 1. The intercalary day brings us to month 1, day 1, and that's the head of the year, where we have our first day of remembrance, and we just do this cycle over and over and over again. Alright, I'm going to take a few moments to briefly discuss some of the ancient calendars, starting with the earliest calendars, depending on the culture, leading up to today's calendar system in the 21st century. Now, as I just mentioned, I do believe that the calendar goes as far back as the first week of creation. And I believe that Adam and his descendants all followed Yahweh's solar calendar to some degree, but I do believe that once Enoch showed up, Enoch being the 7th generation from Adam, he was the first trusted man to get a first-person perspective on how the luminaries actually perform their circuits, being chauffeured around essentially by Uriel, the angel, and he was tasked with writing everything that he saw and was told down so that mankind could continue to follow the exactness and precision of the solar calendar. Enoch knew that the flood of Noah would be impending, and so there had to be a recorded record of how the luminaries actually work and how the solar calendar works, so that once Noah gets off the boat, he can teach his sons and their sons and subsequent generations how to properly keep time. That being said, let's take a look at this first calendar, which is the Babylonian Sumerian calendar, which was a lunar solar calendar with years consisting of 12 lunar months, each beginning when a new crescent moon was first sighted low on the western horizon at sunset, plus an intercalary month inserted as needed by decree. And just for the sake of clarity, the lunisolar calendar is essentially a system that combines the motions or effects of the sun and moon. It employs a calendar year divided according to the phases of the moon, but adjusted in average length to fit the length of the solar cycle. Our next calendar is the Egyptian calendar, and Egyptian coming from the word Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim is the Hebrew word for, or I should say the name of the son of Ham, who is the son of Noah. And so the Egyptians kept a solar 365-day year calendar with an intercalary month of 5 days. And isn't it interesting that we're only a few hundred years after the flood of Noah, and these cultures who come from the sons of Noah are already practicing their calendars and keeping time in a way that is not congruent with what their grandfather, Noah, would have taught them. Alright, so our next culture is the Assyrian culture. And the Assyrians kept a solar calendar. Asher is where we get the word Assyrian from. Asher was the son of Shem, who was the son of Noah. And these were all descendants of Noah. And Noah would have gotten all this information from his father Lamech. Lamech would have received it from his father Methuselah. And Methuselah was given all the writings that Enoch wrote down from Enoch, his father. So we have the succession of wisdom and instruction and how to keep time originating from Enoch and being kept and disseminated to the progeny after the flood. Our next culture is going to be the Persian culture, and they kept a lunar solar system. Then we have the Greeks. And the Greeks were on a lunar 354-day year. The Greek calendars began in most states of ancient Greece, and almost every state had a different rendition of a lunar reckoning with no intercalary days at all. Now we move to the next culture, which would have been the Romans. And they were initially a lunar-based calendar system. And then they transitioned to a lunisolar calendar, which is commonly known as the Julian calendar. The Julian calendar, which was proposed by Julius Caesar in 46 BC, was a reform of the Roman calendar. This calendar became the predominant calendar in the Roman Empire, and subsequently most of the Western world for more than 1600 years. However, in 1582, Pope Gregory XIII modified it to reduce the average length of the year from 365.25 days to 365.2425 days, and thus corrected the Julian calendar's drift against the solar year. Worldwide adoption of this revised calendar, which became known as the Gregorian calendar, took place over the subsequent centuries, first in Catholic countries and then in Protestant countries of the Western Christian world. It is still in use today. The Jewish calendar is lunisolar, which means that it's regulated by the positions of both the moon and the sun. It usually consists of 12 alternating lunar months of 29 and 30 days each, except for Heshvan and Kislev, which sometimes have either 29 or 30 days, and totals 353, 354, or 355 days per year, which falls in line with exactly what Moses recorded in the Book of Jubilees regarding the following of the moon for your months and your days and your years. It's going to come in 10 days too soon, which results in your year being completed 10 days too early. So the present Hebrew calendar is the result of a process of development with a very heavy Babylonian influence. The names of the months, which were derived from the Babylonian exile, are Nisan, Iyar, Sivan, Tammuz, and just an FYI, the rabbis named the fourth biblical month after the name of the Sumerian and Babylonian deity Tammuz, a goddess of fertility. Tammuz is mentioned only once in Ezekiel chapter 8, verse 14, and is linked to the worship of Tammuz. The prophet Ezekiel was taken to the entrance of the gate of the temple of Yahweh to see the women sitting there weeping for Tammuz, while the elders were secretly carrying on their idolatrous worship. Isn't that lovely? Continuing on with the names of the Jewish months, we have Av, Elul, Tishrei, Heshvan, Kislev, Tevet, Shevat, and Adar. A 13th month is added every few years, which is not mentioned or instructed anywhere in the scriptures. Oral traditions and rabbinic writings do not hold authority over the words of our Creator to do so. Karaite Jews use the ripening of the barley to decide whether to add an extra month to the year. Adding a 13th month is not described anywhere in the scriptures, nor are we to look for apparent witnesses like the ripening of barley. Ascertaining when the new crescent moon arrives is not instructed nor mentioned in connection with timekeeping anywhere in the scriptures. These are all man-made, dare I say pagan, traditions that have only solidified the prophecies located in Jubilees chapter 6. And as for what Yahweh reminded and commanded Moses regarding the head or beginning of the year, something that Enoch already knew, it was to be in the same month as Passover and unleavened bread. This is the context for the following passage. And the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, "This month shall be to you the beginning of months. It is the first to you among the months of the year." Judaism teaches that the new year starts in Tishri, which is their 7th month according to their lunar calendar. This is illogical and incorrect. Rachel Ellier is an Israeli professor of Jewish philosophy at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, and she specializes in the Dead Sea Scrolls and ancient Israelite calendrical studies. Judaism believes Rosh Hashanah is when the first year starts, which is the first of Tishri, the 7th month. Professor Ellier states that this custom was first mentioned and written down in the Mishnah and was practiced orally in 2nd century BCE. In one of her recorded video expositions, she asserts that the Hebrews who wrote the scriptures that were discovered in the Dead Sea Scrolls believed that time is holy, eternal, pre-calculated, and based on a solar calendar. They believed that time was not for humans to dictate, and that time was brought from heaven to earth via angels to Enoch. They recognized that it was pre-calculated and had nothing to do with the moon, which is based solely on observation. The calendar is the basis of the covenant, and many angelic interactions took place on feast days within this calendar. She continues saying, "The rabbis were involved in nothing less than a reinvention of Judaism. They were closing an old world based on prophecy and angelic revelation, and opening the sacred canon to human reinterpretation." To many of the Jews of the first millennium BCE, all the texts had been equally holy. The excluded Book of Enoch or Book of Jubilees were certainly not considered less sacred than the Book of Judges or Esther or Daniel. Yet the excluded texts, close to a dozen major works, were not just abandoned, but excised, as if they were a malignant growth. She then goes on to quote a latter 1st century rabbi saying, "Whoever reads them," declared Rabbi Akiva, one of the foremost sages involved in the process, "will have no place in the world to come." She goes on to say that there was a power struggle between the old priestly order that believed its rulings to be divinely inspired and an emerging class of rabbis espousing a different narrative, one which gave human reason and laws a role in shaping the religion. For centuries, the Israelites had marked time according to a solar calendar drawn up by the priestly caste, but regarded as divinely inspired. The calendar emulated the pattern set by God when he created the world in 6 days and rested on the 7th. Sasha Stern is a professor of Rabbinic Judaism and head of the Department of Hebrew and Jewish Studies. He specializes in ancient and medieval Jewish history with an interest in time, calendars, and chronology. Sasha has a published article online that I'm actually just going to pull up and read right from, and we're going to see what his opinion is regarding the heavy Babylonian influence on Orthodox Judaism's calendar. So this article is entitled "The Babylonian Calendar and the Bible." When ancient Israel fell under the dominion of great empires, its calendar was radically altered. This is because in ancient societies, time and calendars were mainly controlled by political rulers. So we find that in most of the Hebrew Bible, the months of the year are only numbered and hardly ever named. But after the Babylonian exile, in the books of Zechariah, Esther, Ezra, and Nehemiah, Babylonian month names suddenly appear and become quite frequent. The Babylonian months of Nisan, Sivan, Elul, Kislev, Tevet, Shevat, and Adar are used either on their own or alongside numbered months. Nisan, in the spring, is consistently equated in these books with the first month of Exodus. Nisan indeed was the first month of the Babylonian calendar. The use of Babylonian month names, which later became standard in the Jewish calendar, is hardly surprising in the context of the post-exilic period. The Babylonian calendar originated in Babylonia, which is in southern Iraq, in the early 2nd millennium BCE, spread to the rest of Mesopotamia in the late 2nd millennium BCE, and then became, in the 1st millennium BCE, the official calendar of the great empires of Assyria, Babylonia, and Persia, in use across the whole Near East. The Jews, under Persian rule, adopted it as their own calendar, as did many other peoples in the Persian Empire. The Jews adopted not only Babylonian month names, but also the entire Babylonian calendar. This calendar was lunar, with each month beginning at the sight of a new moon. Since 12 lunar months are approximately 11 days shorter than the solar year, the Babylonian calendar was intercalated, or evened out, every 2 or 3 years by the addition of a 13th month, usually by duplicating the 12th month, Adar, and less frequently by duplicating the 6th month, Elul. This allowed the lunar system to catch up with the sun and the seasons. This calendar may have been quite similar to the original Israelite one. No, it actually wasn't. Unfortunately, this guy doesn't know Rachel Elior or Enoch because he's wrapped up in Judaism, but we'll continue on, which was most likely also lunar. Indeed, this may have helped the Jews to adopt it without qualms. That Jews of the post-exilic period were using the official imperial calendar to determine the dates of biblical festivals is evident, at least from the Passover papyrus from Elephantine, a Jewish colony in southern Egypt. This document indicates that in 419 BCE, Jews at Elephantine observed the festivals of Passover and unleavened bread during the first month of the Babylonian calendar Nisan, in accordance with the Pentateuch's prescription that these festivals be observed in the first month of the year. This practice presumably continued right into the Hellenistic period, when the Babylonian calendar was still largely used for official purposes by the Aramaic-speaking peoples of the Near East. But after the Jewish Hasmonean state broke off from its Hellenistic Seleucid overlords in the mid-2nd century BCE, the Jews no longer had any reason to comply with the calendar of distant Babylon, and their calendar soon acquired distinct features. Although the Babylonian month names were retained, as in the books of Maccabees, the calendar was intercalated at different times. Only the month of Adar, but not Elul, would be intercalated. Still, many Babylonian features remained central to the Jewish calendar, as the Talmud later remarked. Rabbi Hanina said, "The month names came up with them, with the exiles from Babylon," and that was out of Jerusalem Talmud. In 2 Chronicles chapter 13, we can read about a civil war taking place between the northern house of Israel and the southern house of Judah. Israel had fallen into idolatry and worshipped Jeroboam's golden calves, and had removed the Levitical priests, who were the rightful ministers of Yahweh's covenant, replacing them with others who were not of the Levitical order. This was seen as forsaking Yahweh and his covenant. Let's read about it. "And now you profess to resist the kingdom of the Lord in the hand of the sons of David, and you are a great multitude, and with you are golden calves, which Jeroboam made you for gods. Did you not cast out the priests of the Lord, the sons of Aaron, and the Levites, and make to yourselves priests of the people of any other land? Whoever came to consecrate himself with a calf of the herd and 7 rams, he forthwith became a priest to that which is no God. But we have not forsaken the Lord our God, and his priests, the sons of Aaron, and the Levites, who minister to the Lord. And in their daily courses they sacrifice to the Lord whole burnt offering, morning and evening, and compound incense, and set the showbread on the pure table. And there is the golden candlestick, and the lamps for burning, to light in the evening. For we keep the charge of the Lord God of our fathers, but you have forsaken him. And behold, the Lord and his priests are with us at our head, and the signal trumpets to sound an alarm over us. Children of Israel, fight not against the Lord God of our fathers, for you will not prosper. Unfortunately, this zeal to preserve the Levitical priesthood had an expiry date, as the southern kingdom of Judah partook in the same atrocities under the occupation of the Greeks. Forsaking the father included forsaking his appointed priesthood. Anyone stepping in who wasn't from the lineage of Aaron or politically usurping this office through force has never been accepted by the Father. I want to dig a little more into some of the history where we can see how Israel's calendar and priesthood were changed. In 175 BCE, Antiochus, a Greek descendant of Alexander the Great, conquered Jerusalem. The Greeks held to a lunar calendar which started in the autumn. Historical data reveals that the high priesthood remained in the progeny of the Zadokites from the time of Zadok up until the rise of the Hasmoneans in around 171 to 167 BCE. It was at this time that the Zadok priesthood was usurped and when times and laws were changed in Israel. The house of Zadok occupied the priesthood through much of the Second Temple period, from Jehoshua ben Jehozadak after the exile, down to Simon II, the very same priest that the writer of Ecclesiasticus praised in Ecclesiasticus chapter 50. Simon II's eldest son, Onias III, and his usurping second son, Jason, who introduced the program of Hellenization that eventually led to the Maccabean revolt. The author of 1 Maccabees regarded the Maccabean revolt as a rising of pious Jews against the Seleucid king who had tried to eradicate their religion and against the Jews who supported him. The Seleucid Empire was a Greek state in Western Asia during the Hellenistic period that existed from 312 BC to 63 BC. The author of 2 Maccabees presented the conflict as a struggle between Judaism and Hellenism, words that this author was the first to use. Modern scholarship tends to the second view. Most modern scholars argue that the king was intervening in a civil war between traditionalist Jews in the countryside and Hellenized Jews in Jerusalem. According to Joseph P. Schultz, modern scholarship considers the Maccabean revolt less as an uprising against foreign oppression than as a civil war between the Orthodox and Reformist parties in the Jewish camp. In the conflict over the office of high priest, traditionalists with Hebrew and Aramaic names like Onias contested against Hellenizers with Greek names like Jason or Menelaus. Other authors point to social and economic factors in the conflict. What began as a civil war took on the character of an invasion when the Hellenistic kingdom of Syria sided with the Hellenizing Jews against the traditionalists. As the conflict escalated, Antiochus prohibited the practices of the traditionalists, thereby, in a departure from usual Seleucid practice, banning the religion of an entire people. The Hasmonean bureaucracy was filled with men with Greek names, and the dynasty eventually became very Hellenized to the annoyance of many of its more traditionally minded Jewish subjects. The Hasmoneans accepted the Greek lunar calendar, and were not from the lineage of Aaron or Zadok, and were considered traitors, not liberators, as is commonly thought in religious circles, by the Levitical priests, who called themselves the Sons of Light, because of their acceptance of the lunar calendar. The Hasmoneans were referred to as the Sons of Darkness because of their acceptance and enforcement of the Babylonian-based lunar calendar. A new stage in the investigation of the problem of the calendar of ancient Israel was marked by the acceptance of a learned article by E. Koenig in 1906. He maintains that two distinct calendars were current in ancient Israel. The first, a solar calendar. This solar calendar was well adopted to the conditions of the simple agricultural life which the Israelites lived during the first period of their sojourn in Palestine. It reckoned the day from sunrise. The second calendar was a lunisolar year. The day now came quite naturally to be reckoned from sunset. This second calendar was obviously based upon Babylonian models and was adopted under direct Babylonian influence at about 600 BC, when Babylonian religion and general culture began to affect with steadily increasing force the Jewish exiles in Babylonia and, through those of them who returned from exile, the Jews who had remained in Palestine. This is from Supplementary Studies in the Calendars of Ancient Israel. I had the privilege of recently meeting up with a brother from across the pond named Ken Henderson. He and I had a brief recorded discussion regarding an analog solar calendar that he created. Ken actually shipped one over to me, and it has been a true joy to use. Check this video's description for a link to his website where he offers templates of his solar calendar. Let's talk about this thing behind me. You had sent me an email several months ago, and it started off as a possible business venture, but I know there's been some hiccups on your end. You've been trying so hard to get this thing kind of almost mass produced in a way so that our community can have something tangible in their hand to practice this calendar system. And there's just been some adversity on your end, but you did reach out to me, and you got me really excited about this whole solar Enochian Zadokian calendar. And why don't you just discuss briefly who you are, why you care about this calendar so much, and then maybe we'll just go over whatever it is that you want to discuss regarding the calendar.
Okay. Thank you, Ken. Thanks for having me here. My name's Ken. I'm from a small town in Hampshire in England. What can I say about myself? I've been a struggling Christian throughout my life. I'm the only one in the family that cares to read the Bible, and I've kind of led the Christian life thinking that whatever I did would be okay in the end. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time overseas. I was teaching in China, and I looked at myself, and I can remember this prayer very, very clearly. And I just said, look, I just really need to know who you are, for what you are, and really need to understand your ways, really. And it was a very heartfelt prayer, and I've had prayed before, but this one really sort of settled with me.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time I was in China. I had bought an apartment. I had plenty of money. I had a business in China. I was doing very well, thank you very much. But my lifestyle was very, very far away from him, and I kind of started to hate myself, hence the prayer.
Mm-hmm.
Forward 2 years from that, I'm now married. I'm in the Philippines, and I'm now penniless.
Oh, yeah.
And I kind of think that the way that sometimes God works with you is, well, you asked for it, now you're going to get it.
What you wish for,
Yeah. And our family, we've gone through a lot. We've gone through an awful amount, and I've since heard and read about other families and other families that at their initial sort of yearning to know God, they've kind of struggled and we've been homeless, we've been struggling for work, we've been all through the mill sort of thing. But we hang in there, and we cling on to his promises, and as he starts to rebuild you, you start feeling obviously much better, in a better place. So I've lost everything, and I'm an old man. I've got a young family, and I'm just wanting to leave my sons something that they could be proud of and maybe benefit from. If I'm not around, that's the breadwinner gone, then how are the family going to sort of make an income? So that was my very initial sort of thoughts about the calendar once it was made. Making it wasn't such a problem, because you read Enoch. This was one which I was doing. As you can see, it's very basic.
First prototype.
You got 30 days, so there's your 30 days. You got 3 months in the season, so there's your 3 months. You just needed that extra day on the 31st day, and then you've got the 4 seasons. So for me, it was quite an easy to do. Okay. Mm-hmm. Once I had that and we were following it, things start getting a bit exciting, because we're now watching the sun skip across the horizon on these first days of the month. And it gets quite, I think people need to know about this.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. Do you know what I mean?
I do.
And so I spent a lot of time trying to get a sample done in China. The lady that did that for me is no longer around. I tried to keep it very simple. I thought the pegs were quite nice. It's a nice, easy size. It's not, you know, and I thought it'd be very marketable to put with the Bible being sold in the shop. That's all I'm thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Since then, there's been a lot of contention around the calendar, and I think the moon doesn't do anything like this. It's never going to be a 364-day calendar with the moon involved. It's always on the sun, and with the sun skipping across the horizon, and we can actually witness that. The only thing that is missing is how we intercalate, I think, and not intercalate in between the seasons, but intercalate at the end of a certain number of years, be it 5 years, 6 years. I'm not too sure yet. Okay, yeah. So I just think it would be really nice if, and I've given you a template, Ken, to hand out to the community if they want to make their own. Make your own calendar. Watch the horizon. Don't worry too much about every day going out with your camera, but towards the end of the month, have a look at the horizon for the sunrise and the sunset, and then enjoy that change on the first day of the month, where you can see a difference, a marked difference. Sometimes it's a marked difference in temperature. If we could do it all together, then maybe we could start answering some of these questions when it comes to intercalation of the years, not intercalation of the seasons, which is a transition of the seasons.
Yeah.
Again, is a sticking point with some people. Some people think that it's the 31st day that should be memorialized rather than the first day of the new season that should be memorialized. And for me, that's a very, very small.
Yeah.
I would rather celebrate the joy that I feel when I see the sun move over rather than the night before or the day before.
Yeah, and I agree. It's a nuanced little thing, but I agree. Like the first of the first month.
Yeah, it's something very special. The head of the season or the head of the year. You know, you've got the trumpets on the first. You've got the head of the year. The first day of the year should be celebrated. Why shouldn't the first of each season be celebrated? No, I think they should be. But I stand to be corrected. I stand always. I don't think I've got all the answers. I certainly haven't got all the answers. But I think as a community, and if we can all just sort of start using the same thing. I mean, this is the boys at Zadok, Canada. They really have worked very, very hard on this. That's their calendar in wooden form. It's their calendar. It's not my calendar. It's all the hard work that they've done. I've just put it out in a different format. Mm-hmm. They really spearheaded my interest in the calendar and my interest in how things were done. I think a lot of hours of work have been done. When we look at the word Moedim, it's an appointed time. It's a fixed time. It's fixed in place. You can't move it. It's there all the time. It's a meeting point. And this is why one of the reasons why the calendar is so important, isn't it? It is a meeting point. We can't miss these days, you know. You know, we can't turn up late for an appointment and expect the dentist to fix our teeth. You know, sorry, come back next year. You know.
Yeah, I agree. And not only do we have a retrospective look into these feasts, but they have eschatological, future prophetic implications as well, right? I mean, they represent. I mean, you can tie so many things to them, right? But we're going to be continuing to do them for eternity, in my opinion.
Yes.
So
yes.
Why not do them now? Get used to it.
Absolutely.
We're told to practice His ways, are we not, Ken? So this is great practice.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Practice until we get it right. Well, in my case, it's going to take a long time.
I'll be right behind you.
Lucky I have 2 lives to do it.
Yeah, that's right. Amen. Amen.
This is a good conversation starter, you know. So,
well, that one in your hand, Ken, is more reminiscent of the ancient Israelite one that was unearthed not too long ago. That looks kind of similar to that, right? So it's cool.
It really does. I got this idea from I think it was a a piece of bone found, some artifact which I read about, and it had all these notches. They weren't regular like this. I thought, oh, that looks like a calendar.
Yeah.
And I thought, I took the idea from there. And then since then, there's been this other one that's been bandied about, which looks very, very similar to this. It's even got the 3 months at the top. At least I think they're 3 months, because they've got 12. I can't quite work it out. They've got 12 down one side, which would be the months, and then they've got the 3 along the top. So whether that's where the 31st day goes, I don't know, but I can't see why that's got so much significance at the top of the calendar. Do you know what I mean? It's but very similar, very similar. I think it's just a great bit of fun. What I'd like to do is go to some churches and actually talk to some people in church about this and say, hey, how do you fancy having a calendar that perhaps the angels and God and everyone else is keeping?
That would be a good.
Are you interested?
Look them in.
I mean, it's a very sort of it's a very light way into introducing how important the Sabbath day is. I think when you start speaking about the Sabbath day, people start they start moving away from it. But I mean, I think the Sabbath day is a sign between him and us. It is a great sign between him and us. It's and I think it's unfortunately been lost.
I agree. It's a sign of the covenant, right? It's the covenant. I mean, we want to participate in the covenant, so why not
do everything
in the same way?
Is spot on.
Absolutely spot and as you said, the angels, the Father, Yeshua, they're all participating in this calendar up in the heavens, the firmament layers above us. So it's good. It's a good system, and it works. We know that it does work. It's just been lost for so long. So why not try to resurrect the old ways to get on the same path?
Exactly right. And I have asked the angels to patent this for me.
Very nice. Who did that one? Uriel or what?
Cool. He's an angel, isn't he? Oh, can't wait to meet him, Uriel. He's a multitasker extraordinaire, isn't he?
Yeah.
Really, all over the place. All over the place. Unbelievable. Yeah.
I agree. Thanks again, man. I really do appreciate you coming on.
Thank you, Ken. Yeah.
All right. So what we have here is Ken Henderson's analog solar calendar, and this calendar requires your daily participation in that you'll need to move the pegs around daily, as well as monthly and seasonally. So I'm just going to show you a sped up version of how this actually works. But before I do that, I just want to briefly go over what it is that you're even looking at. So right there at the top left of this analog calendar, you can see that there is a blue circle, and to the right of the circle there's a square, and then to the right of the square we have a diamond. And that row of shapes represents the months. Just below the months we have 3 columns of 10 representing the days. And as you may recall, there are 30 days in the first month, 30 days in the second month, and 31 days in the third month. So once your peg has reached the bottom of the 30th day, it will then move to where Ken has included an intercalary day peg hole. So you would put the peg into that hole there once you've reached the third month. And just south of that is the 4 seasons. And so when we start the calendar off, we're starting in the spring. Month 1, day 1 starts in the spring. And so you're going to go through the months. And once you get to the third month, and you've put your peg into the 31st intercalary day peg hole, you will then move the seasonal peg down 1 to the next season. And you're going to do that 4 times. And if my math is correct, you'll take the 4 seasons and times it by the 3 months, and that'll give you 12 months in the solar calendar year. And it's really that simple. We're going to continue doing this year after year after year. And before I actually show you how this works, I just want to point out that the blue shapes that we see in the day columns represent the Sabbath. So if you start your month at the very first month, which is the blue circle, and you put it in the first peg on the first day, and you move it down 1, 2, 3 days, you'll end up on that first blue circle, which should be our first Sabbath. And then you continue on, and you'll end up on the next blue circle, which would be the next week's Sabbath, and so on and so forth, until you move the month over to the next shape, which would be the square, and then the square will be your Sabbaths. So it's a really unique and rather genius way of representing something simple and in analog fashion. Alright, so we're in the first month, and as you can see, I'm moving across the day columns all the way down to the 30th. Then we move over the peg to the next month, start at the top, move our way down the columns, down to the 30th, move it over to the third month as we continue down. So this third month, we'll end up having an intercalary day, move it to the top, move the season down 1, move it back over to the first month, and there we go again. We do our 30 days in this fourth month, move it over to the fifth month, we do our 30 days, move it over to the sixth month, we do our 30 days within this month. I should say 31 days, because we have our intercalary day. Move it down 1, move the peg over to the 7th month, move it over to the 8th month, we'll do our 30 days, ninth month, which will have 31 days, move it down to the winter season, which is our 4th season, so in the 10th month, complete our 30 days, move it over to the 11th month. Nope, do our 30 days. Move it over to the 12th month, which has 31 days. And then we move our peg back to the beginning. So hopefully that was pretty straightforward, and it's provided you with a better look at how we can participate on a daily basis with Yahweh's solar creation calendar, and it will be a blessing to you. To summarize this creation solar peg calendar, we have 364 days on this calendar. We have 52 weeks, which means we have 52 weekly Sabbaths on this calendar. There are 13 weeks per season. There's 7 days per week. There are 7 feast days that are celebrated within the first 7 months of this 12-month solar calendar, and that actually excludes the 4 intercalary days of remembrance, which are also feast days. We have the Shemitah every 7th year, which is essentially just a Sabbath rest for the land, as is instructed in Leviticus chapter 25 verse 4, as well as Exodus 23 verse 11. We have 7 sets of 7 years, equaling 1 Jubilee. And to top it all off, we have this very unique and convenient pattern of month 1 starting on Wednesday, month 2 starting on Friday, month 3 starting on Sunday, and then we continue that cycle throughout the rest of the remaining months. Month 4 starts on Wednesday again, month 5 starts on Friday, month 6 on Sunday, and so on and so forth. So it's a very consistent and orderly pattern of timekeeping. Hey, if you've stuck around this far, I just want to thank you for such an awesome attention span. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy the content here. I've got a few shoutouts to make: Wayne Love, Asia Coughlin, Reed Tackaberry, Loretta Lucas, and Alex Campbell. Thank you for your love and support. Shalom.